Week 16 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defenses I would start this week. The first one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers here have a great matchup on paper at the Carolina Panthers that give up the third most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And let's be honest here, this Carolina Panther team's been a mess for the last 2 months of the season here. Cam Newton in his return this season to Carolina, he's been a train wreck. He's been a turnover machine and a guy who just, I don't think is starter worthy anymore in the NFL. So if he's going to start once again in this game, we'll split reps with P.J. Walker, whatever the case may be here, or even if Sam Darnold comes back from his injury, none of these guys are going to make a difference, in my opinion. And I think this Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense could feast in this one. The last few games for him, Week 13 at Atlanta, 11 points, 5 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 14 versus Buffalo, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks, and an interception. In Week 15, I know they lost that game, but they only gave up 9 points and had 2 sacks. But this week here, I think they take it out on Cam Newton if he's going to start in this Panther offense. And I think this Buck team has a top 5 performance at the defensive side of things. And it wouldn't surprise me if they find the end zone as well. The next defense, the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chargers here have been an up-and-down defense this season. But right here, they got a tasty matchup in Texans that give up the 4th most fantasy points to defenses on the season. So the last few weeks here for this Charger defense, Week 13 at Cincinnati, 22 points allowed, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, a touchdown. Week 14 versus the Giants, 21 points allowed, 2 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery in that one. And then Week 15 versus Kansas City, obviously versus that high-powered offense, they weren't going to do much. 34 points allowed, a sack, an into, and a fumble recovery. But right here, Davis Mills and this Texan offense, they've been struggling all season. They've been turning the ball over, and he's been taking sacks. So I think this week here, the Chargers get back on track, and the defense has a good ball game, and they have a double-digit fantasy day as well. The next defense, the Dallas Cowboys. So believe it or not, this season here, the Dallas Cowboys lead the league in turnovers caused here, which is very surprising to me. This is a defense over the last few seasons that they were lucky if they got 1 or 2 turnovers every 3 or 4 games. But right here in the last few games, they got 12 turnovers is Dallas. The last few weeks for them, Week 13 at New Orleans in that ball game, they had a big game. 17 points allowed, 2 sacks, 4 interceptions, and a pick 6. Week 14 at Washington in that one, 14 points allowed, 5 sacks and into, 3 fumble recoveries, a touchdown and a block kick on it. And then Week 15 at the Giants, 6 points allowed, 3 interceptions, a sack, a fumble recovery. So right here, Week 16, a good matchup once again versus Washington that a few weeks ago they made Taylor Heineke look like a crash test dummy with a lot of big hits, a few turnovers caused, including a fumble recovery touchdown by Armstrong in that game. And right here, this D-line, they look pretty good right now, even though I know the competition hasn't been all that great over the last 3 weeks here for the Cowboys, but their defense is winning their ball games more than the offense, which is very surprising. So this week here, Heineke should be back. After Garrett Gilbert coming off the street pretty much here, looked pretty decent for the first half of that game versus Philly before they figured him out and played well. But anyway, Heineke, Gilbert, wow, and whoever starts this game, I think Dallas, they're going to put up defensive numbers and play a good game. And Dallas is back at home as well after winning the last 3 on the road. The next defense, the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs here, their defense has been great this season for the middle part of the year. I know they didn't have a great ball game, was the Chiefs last week versus Angeles Chargers, but this week here versus a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that really can't move the football for whatever reason this season. While they have a lot of great weapons in Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Harris, they're not moving the football well. Big Ben, it looks like his time is up and he should retire because he's not moving the ball well. He's not moving well in the pocket. And the Steelers, they've been just pulling these games out by the skin of their teeth here. But I think this Chief defense can make a few plays on them and play well. Week 13 versus Denver, 9 points allowed, a sack, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery in that one. Week 14 versus Vegas, 9 points allowed in that ball game, 4 sacks and into, 4 fumble recoveries, and a return touchdown. And then Week 15 at the Chargers, like I mentioned, wasn't a good game for them defensively. 28 points allowed and into, and a fumble recovery. But right here, Week 16 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they could sack Ben a few times. I think they could hold them down to maybe anywhere from the mid-teens to low 20s and have a good fantasy day. So the Chiefs here, definitely a defense I would start this week. And the fifth and final defense is a 1 week only type of start, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks I mentioned as a waiver wire pickup this week here, and they got a great matchup versus the Bears that give up the fifth most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And to be honest, the Seattle defense hasn't been totally horrible over the last few weeks here. Week 13 versus San Francisco, 23 points allowed, a sack, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, and a safety. Week 14 at Houston, 13 points allowed in that one, 2 sacks in that one. And then week 15 in that sloppy ball game on Tuesday Night Football at the Rams, 20 points allowed, 4 sacks and an into. So right here with a good matchup in week 16 versus the Bears. I think Seattle can make a few plays. They're home with the 12th man, and we'll see what they could do. So that's a few defenses I would start here in a crucial semifinals week here for fantasy owners in week 16 of the fantasy football season.